We've all been there. You rush to check your bank account to see if you just got paid, and when you did, your reaction may be something like this. So we do what we need to do. Pay rent, pay our car bill, student loans, and then we buy ourselves some things that we say we need.
Oh my god, look at this egg cooker.
Yo, babe, that's clutch.
It's
Get it.
so cute, we need it.
Yo.
And before you know it, you realize you spent a little more than you could afford. And the next time you go to check your bank account, well, your reaction may look something like this.
Oh!
You okay?
Yeah. All right.
Before we begin, we think it's important to acknowledge that right now in the world, we're going through a horrific pandemic. Similarly to many of you out there, we don't know when we're gonna work next.
The life we knew has completely changed, and the rainy days we've always heard of are now here.
We understand that this video isn't the solution to the financial obstacles that we're all facing. However, we really do believe that in dire times like these, all we're looking for is hope, looking for ways that we can improve as individuals. So that's what this video really is for us. It was a way to push ourselves to assess not only how we can maybe recover from this, but how we can do better next time.
With everything that's going on in the world, the topic of money seems to ring a little differently. It's on all of our minds, often becoming the source of stress, concern, and uncertainty.
Whether you're a college student or you're CEO of a company or you're just in between jobs, you most likely have a relationship status of it's complicated with money.
But why is that? Studies have shown that almost 72% of Americans reported feeling stressed about money at least a few times in the prior month, leading them to avoid confronting it at all costs. The final result? A vicious cycle that can often lead into poor financial habits, deeper debt, and an overwhelming anxiety.
So we asked ourselves this question: what's it gonna take for us to improve our relationship with money? So we went over to a financial expert who happens to be Tiffany's dad and asked,
What would it take for somebody to change their relationship with money?
There are three things, Tiffany: mentality, preparation, and practice.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
I love you. Tiffany, you look so pretty today.
Thanks, Dad. So let's talk about mentality. Time and time again, we hear about successful people who overcame extreme adversity. So often we try to understand what they did right and try to use that as a path.
but that never works. Why? Because it wasn't their actions that made the difference. It was their mentality. They used their obstacles and anxieties as fuel in order to not only survive, but to thrive.
But it isn't that simple. Rewiring your mind doesn't start with simply turning your anxiety switch off. It starts with figuring out why it exists in the first place.
Truth is, many of us have very legitimate reasons for having negative emotions when it comes to our finances. Author of Happy Money, Ken Honda, actually calls this money wounds and claims that many of our core feelings about money can even stem all the way back to childhood. For me, I realized that this was ever so true. A lot of my spending was due to this weird desire to overcompensate for things that we couldn't afford either in my childhood or in my early adult life. Realizing this simple thing allowed me to understand the root of my anxieties, making it a lot easier to change the narrative in my head.
Which leads us to our next step, preparation. Most Americans believe that in order to make money, they need money. This isn't necessarily true. There are multiple ways one can expand their wealth, even if you're starting with only a couple of dollars.
But this takes research. You begin your preparation by identifying what your financial options are, whether it be a savings account or a 401k. By doing this, you'll have a better understanding of what your goals are. You then have to do what most of us have been avoiding. Take a hard look at your spending history and figure out which financial habits have prevented you from attaining your goals. So that's what we did.
I'm like sweating right now. I feel really uncomfortable.
Welcome to Tiffany and Roy's Habit Rehab.
Forced habit rehab. We want to make sure that we are prepared so that when life does eventually go back to normal, that we aren't making the mistakes that we used to make.
We're going to take a personal journey and assess our statement from a month previous to quarantine. Look at what we spent on our wants and look at what we spent on our needs. Now, there is a twist to this statement breakdown. We're actually going to be switching our statements and looking at each other's expenses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're gonna need my fingerprint.
I already have it. We're going to be using Truebill. And Truebill is an app which helps us track our expenses with all our accounts combined. And we're going to go back to February, we said?
I'm like praying that February was like magically the month that I behaved really well.
All right, here we go.
You spend so much money on food and drink. It's like insane. Literally, when you go to a restaurant, you order like 4
Because
items
I'm
off.
hungry.
4 like
I'm
items off.
hungry. I'm a big man. Those two both are your lashes?
No, that's not my lashes. That's my facial. That's my lashes.
Did you need it?
Do you understand that skincare is expensive?
This is rehab. We're done with the expense sheet, and it looks like Tiffany's need was 68% of her income, which I'm very impressed with. Good job. 42% of the income is on want.
I mean, I'm looking at how much I spent on shopping, and to be honest, I really do need to take a better look at what I choose to buy, what I consider a necessity. Now Roy's turn. As he sits on his high horse thinking that he is the king of finance, I would like to point off that we are actually not that far. Roy spent
There's no way.
61% on your needs, meaning you spend 39% on your wants. I think I would spend what you spent in that month in a year, personally.
There's certainly a miscalculation. I most certainly understand I go out a lot and dine a lot outside, and so I'm definitely going to start easing up on that. So bottom line, our habits sucked, and we're prepared to change.
Which brings us to our final step, practice. You know the saying, practice makes perfect. In our daily lives, we're constantly presented with financial temptations. We forget that all of our choices, even buying the slightly more expensive brand of milk, is what adds up over time.
You see, your financial habits aren't something you acquire overnight. It's a muscle you need to exercise.
Okay guys, we're outside the grocery store, and while we can't control our fixed costs like rent and bills, we've decided to go and control how much we spend at the grocery store.
Yeah, so we have our grocery list from last time. Between Roy and I, last time we spent $206, but I do think that we can cut some costs. So we're gonna see what we can eliminate, what we can get the cheaper alternative to, and see what happens.
We are shocked with how much we saved. Today we spent around $90. And last time we spent around $180. We're discounting some of the kitchen paper that we bought. So that it means that we saved 50%.
Nearly 50%, yeah, it's crazy. I realized that I dropped a lot of the things I really didn't need, like beverages, extra foods that I didn't need.
We took out a bunch of things, and we also bought the cheaper version of literally every single item that we did repeat and buy. So we did a lot of changes like that. I didn't think it was gonna be this drastic of a change. The summary of this little experiment really taught us that the little things really do go a very long way. And I can't imagine if we were to apply that to the other areas of our life.
So what did we learn? We learned that the key to having a good relationship with money begins and ends with us.
Before quarantine, we had this belief that our relationship with money was dependent on how much we made that month.
However, we now realize that we're in control, even when our circumstances tell us we're not.
It's also important to remember that you're human. Life happens. And sometimes we aren't gonna have that large savings account. Sometimes we'll even make mistakes. And that's okay. Because money isn't a destination, it's a journey. It's a relationship, one that you'll be in for the rest of your life. And hopefully next time you look at your bank statement, even when you didn't just get paid, you'll look like this.
You're kicking me out of the frame, babe. Even when our circumstances.
Not even, no.
Even
Even
when
when
our
our
circumstances
circumstances
tell
tell
us
us
we're
we're
not.
not.
I got it. Before quarantine, we had this. Babe, stop laughing. I hate myself.